Let's talk The House of the Dead. If you enjoy this video, please hit that like button. It helps me out a lot. And please consider subscribing for weekly, high-quality Sonic and Sega videos. Let's begin. I've been playing a fair bit of the House of the Dead remake on Nintendo Switch recently, and I've been really enjoying it. It's not anywhere near as good as it would be with a light gun, but it's still a well-made, lovely time. I'd still favour the dodgy Saturn port with a light gun over this version though. I'm just hoping that Arcade 1UP will release an arcade cabinet version at some point. That would be a day one purchase for me. Anyway, because of the remake, The House of the Dead has been on my mind a lot lately. And recently, at the time of recording, a Streets of Rage movie was just announced, which also got me thinking about Sega movies and all the properties I'd love to see make the jump to the big screen. And one of the first ones I thought of was The House of the Dead. A high-budget, super gory, over-the-top horror action movie set in the Curian Mansion could be a wonderfully silly, fun time. Then it hit me. They already made a House of the Dead movie. I saw it when it came out. It got a sequel. So why, as a big House of the Dead fan, had I completely forgotten these movies existed? The more and more I thought about it, the more I remembered the project's initial announcement and how I went from extremely excited to... well, let's just say the red flags soon started popping up. Maybe I hadn't forgotten about it. Maybe I'd repressed it? Now, before we start, I know this movie is by infamous film director, and I use that title very, very loosely, Uwe Boll. I probably just butchered that pronunciation. Anyway, he was responsible for a string of abysmally received movies in the 2000s. And he apparently used a German tax incentive loophole to make money for his investors from these piss-poor box office bombs. Regardless, I'm not going to go into all that in this video because I didn't know anything about that at the time. I don't think anyone did. I'm going at this from what I was at the time, an 18-year-old House of the Dead fan who was super psyched to hear it was being turned into a movie. The first I heard of this project was when it was already with Mindfire Entertainment, a production company behind the finished project. Prior to this, it was being developed by DreamWorks, but this had completely flown under my radar. It was probably around 2001, maybe 2002, that I learned about the movie we eventually ended up with. I can't remember where I first heard about it, probably in a Dreamcast magazine or something, but after learning about it, I found the official website, houseofthedeadmovie.com, and checked in on it constantly for updates. The site was pretty good for news too, with fairly frequent blog posts, casting information, etc., sometimes from Boll himself. But straight away, the first red flag for me was... why did it look so... cheap when compared with other websites at that time? I know it was the early days of the production and placeholders are common, but why were there two different House of the Dead logos on the same page? There were often grammatical errors and typos too, but I guess this was down to the people posting not being native English speakers, so I can't hold this against them. Then the cast started getting revealed. Who the hell were these people? Rudy? Simon? Alicia? Where was Curian? Where were Rogan and G? Nevertheless, I kept faith, assuring myself that these were just early days and that the company must know what they were doing. Oh, and hey, look! We're getting a flashing woman in the cast. Whoa! Eventually, the synopsis dropped, and it sounded absolutely nothing like the games at all. This movie would definitely not be a tale of AMF agents storming a mansion filled with unspeakable abominations. It would instead be the story of a group of students on spring break who go to attend a rave on a private island where they discover the place to be completely deserted, until they realize all the ravers have been turned into zombies and all hell breaks loose. Alright, reading that back, it doesn't sound bad, but it doesn't sound much like House of the Dead either. Would there even be a house in this film? One thing I did quite like in the run-up to this was the production photos they released of the zombies. As a huge fan of the Evil Dead series, I like the look of these practical costumes and prosthetics. The reveal of the movie poster looked cheap and as straight to DVD as they come though. Going off memory here, there was one or two early teaser trailers released online that made the movie look like absolute crap. I can't find any trace of them now unfortunately, but there is a mention of them on the archived website, so at least I know it wasn't the insane dream of a madman. These things actually existed. The website also notes that All material shown in the internet trailer is rough material right out of the editing room, or from the set. Music and sound effects are temp versions, and there are no digital effects enhanced. Well then, don't release it yet. Hold on to the footage until you're ready to show people. Don't put something naff out there for the sake of it. You're gonna damage your product. I know it put me off the movie a fair bit at the time. Eventually, after what seemed like a long time waiting, we got a theatrical trailer, and it was okay. Actually, I just rewatched it for the first time in about 20 years. The whole thing was early 2000s AF, and is cut so rapidly it should have an epilepsy warning, but yeah, it looks like a movie. It has zombies, guns, and action. No AMF agents, but I was already prepared for that from the synopsis. There was a budget behind this thing after all. $12 million to be exact. Although I'm not sure what $12 million would be today, adjusted for inflation, 20 years later. But with mostly unknown actors, this clearly left plenty of money for sets, makeup, and some decent looking special effects. It looked like silly fun. I think Sega was actually betting on this thing becoming a big success. I mean, when they were making this thing, the team even met the Japanese developers, who shared ideas and suggestions with the film's creators. And Sega of America's CEO at the time, Peter Moore, even cameoed in the movie as a zombie. So why do I have barely any memories of it besides an overused camera rig effect? And, well, I don't know, I just recall it being unwatchably shit. Bear with me while I fork over £6 for the high definition version on Amazon Prime, tuck into a few highballs, and rewatch the whole thing. My memories of it are so vague, I'm basically watching it for the first time. 90 minutes later. Okay, that was bizarre. Here's a short review. It's full of spoilers, but trust me, you're better watching this than wasting your time with the whole thing. That said, I'm not gonna crap all over the whole thing, as there were actually some positives here. Anyway, let's start with the story. The film focuses on a bunch of students who are heading to a big illegal rave on an island somewhere for spring break. Wait, why the big Sega banner? Are they sponsoring an illegal rave? Or maybe, by coincidence, that happens to be the DJ's name and logo. Anyway, it seems our main characters have missed the boat to the party, so they pay the captain of a nearby boat $1,000 to take them to the island and back. Despite him and his dopey assistant warning the students of the dangers of that island, they go anyway. When they arrive at the rave, it's completely deserted. What a swizz! I mean, what is this?
Fire Festival?
But it's not long before they discover the whole place has been overrun by zombies. Oh no! They eventually discover that these things are coming from a house, really more of a church, and the monsters are being created by a still alive 15th century Spanish priest who was banished by the Catholic Church back in the day for being an arsehole. He created some sort of immortality serum for himself and used it to start making zombies too. What follows for the bulk of the rest of the movie is a series of mind-numbingly dumb action sequences until most of the main cast, the zombies, and the old monster priest man have been killed off. By the end of it, two main characters have more or less survived, Rudy and a mortally wounded Alicia, his former ex-girlfriend, as AMF agents, led by Rogan and G from the video game, sweep in to clean up and rescue any survivors. Here it is revealed that Rudy's last name is Curian. He's the villain from House of the Dead 1, and he's presumably going to use the immortality serum to save Alicia, which will kick off the events of House of the Dead 1.
What a twist!
This whole thing was tied to the game. It was just a prequel. I mean, yeah, I'm taking a piss, but that's not a bad thing. I tip my hat to them for that. Now let's talk about some specific areas of the movie. The editing. This movie is a visual mess right out of the gate. It starts with some fairly normal opening credits. Then we get a very brief shot of a sad-looking Rudy with some narration, and this appears to be from the end of the movie. Then we cut to cutscene footage from House of the Dead 1, where Sophie is killed at the end of the first level, complete with the game's dialogue. It's so jarring. Then we get some more opening credits, this time made entirely of arcade game footage, with a really naff visual filter over the top of it, accompanied by, what sounds to me, like a Prodigy knockoff. When the movie begins, the narration continues with some bizarre freeze frame usage to introduce the characters. It's so weird. Obviously it then abruptly stops. I mean, the whole movie is so visually inconsistent, especially with its scene transitions. So many different transitions are used, often only once, which makes the whole thing look like a huge mess. Look at this shot. What the fuck just happened to Greg? Watching the movie at that point, I honestly couldn't tell you. Presumably he died, but why didn't that happen when anyone else died in the movie? It's like the editor bought a new transition pack, got overexcited, and wanted to try them all out at once. And what the fuck is happening here? It's a horrendous assault on the senses. Visually, the worst part of this whole thing is the inclusion of loads of video game shots throughout the movie. It's so fucking jarring. Sometimes they accompany the shooting scenes where I kind of, but not really, understand what they were going for, but at other points they're used completely out of the blue as a noisy scene transition. What's the point? They don't even have the blood set to red, for fuck's sake. Visuals and lighting. Somewhere I will give the film credit is its visuals. Maybe it's because I'm an old school horror fan, but I like a lot of the zombie makeup and prosthetics, and I love the practical gore effects such as heads exploding and blood galore. It's well done. The quality of the zombie effects are a bit inconsistent though, ranging from ghouls that wouldn't look out of place in The Walking Dead, to some with just a bit of grey face paint, similar to 1968's Night of the Living Dead style. Some of the shots in the movie are nice too. I really like the outdoor lighting and the use of fog in the background of some of the wood scenes here. It looks nice. It's nothing we haven't seen before, but credit where credit's due. It's good. Sound design and score. Another area this movie falls flat for me is with the music. There's an occasional, decent orchestral score in here that sets the tone quite nicely early on. But for the bulk of the movie, there's just loud, booming dance tracks throughout, regardless of what's happening on screen. Maybe it's because originally there was supposed to be a rave on the island, although that didn't really end up happening. Maybe it's because it's trying to capture the feeling of the arcade game. Regardless of the reason, it doesn't work here. It's just constant noise. It kills any suspense whatsoever, and also destroys any attempt at jump scares because the film is so damn loud the whole fucking time you become completely numb to it. Am I watching a horror movie or in town at the disco? I know which I'd prefer. Writing. In terms of writing, this is a bare-bones plot with the sole purpose of getting a group of people together, arming them to the teeth with weapons, and then having them rip apart an army of the undead. Which sounds fine for what it is, I guess, but the gun battles go on for so long and they're so fucking loud that despite some nice gore and visual effects, they just become tedious and I found my brain switching off. It's filled with early 2000s teenager-targeted horror cliches too, such as women with their tits out, creepy perv with a camera filming said tits, and embarrassing, cringy sex jokes. Honestly, it feels like it was written by someone who's never met a woman before. I'll cut it a bit of slack though, because a lot of movies at this time aimed at teenagers had all this stuff in them. The parts that genuinely got a laugh out of me were seemingly completely unintentional. The captain checking for a storm with his fingers made me burst out laughing because of how ridiculous it was. Conclusion. Overall, revisiting this movie was a waste of my time and money, and it would probably be a waste of your time and money too. There's some nice score effects and visuals here, and you will laugh loudly from time to time, but not where the writers intended. I found that the things I was complimenting this movie for, such as a decent orchestral score and it actually looking like a movie, rather than something straight to DVD, should not be praised, but just rather the most basic expectation for a theatrical movie with a reasonable budget. It's cringy, it's loud, and it's stupid, and it should be avoided at all costs. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for weekly Sega videos. Have you seen The House of the Dead? Do you agree with my review? Let me know in the comments below. I try to reply to everyone. If this video does well, by my standards, I'll do a follow-up review for House of the Dead 2, a movie I can't even remember if I saw or not. That right there is a sign of quality. Anyway, please check out some of my other videos. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time.